Hi everyone, we're back with another Rare Talk series, which is a series where individuals can talk about issues and situations within the rare disease space to help raise awareness for a specific disease. So we try to speak to people who have the same condition to try and help show sort of like daily struggles of living with these conditions and the difference between each person and to help bring awareness. So today's episode is going to be about lupus, and the month we are filming this is October, which is actually Lupus Awareness Month. And today we're speaking to Chelsea and Katrina. So would you guys just like to introduce yourself a bit first? I don't know, whoever wants to go first.
Hi, I'm Chelsea. I'm 22 and I was diagnosed with lupus at the age of 14.
Hi, I'm Katrina. I'm 23 and I was diagnosed with lupus at the age of 9.
Amazing. I'll just do a bit of an introduction to myself. I'm Katie, I'm 20 years old, and I'm a Rare Youth Project intern here at Rare Youth Revolution. So I live with two main rare diseases, which is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and chronic intestinal pseudo-obstruction. And I set up this series myself with another young girl on the youth team, Esther, who also had EDS, just because we sort of wanted to do something together to help highlight some of the struggles of growing up with a rare disease. So we have a few questions that we're going to ask Chelsea and Katrina sort of about lupus and about living with it and growing up with it. So the first question is, how would you describe lupus? Maybe someone like who hasn't heard of it before, and how does it affect your daily life? So Katrina, do you sort of want to ask that question first?
Yeah, for me, the best way I feel to explain it is that lupus is an autoimmune disease, and I like to say it's like a little party going on in my body. So my immune system is the host of the party, and it doesn't really work very well. It doesn't know how to keep people out and keep the good things in, keep the bad things out. It really just invites everybody, and then they go to different parts of my body and just attack it. So I get lots of joint pain. My biggest issue really is fatigue. I find it very difficult to wake up, and that kind of affects my ability to do normal things at normal times like other people. My joint pain when I was first diagnosed was super difficult to manage. I was in pain all the time, almost bedridden at some points. And I think for other people to kind of grasp what lupus is, I think it's just tiredness, pain. I'm allergic to the sun. It can cause flares. And someone's common cold could last a week. My common cold could last months. So yeah, that's how I would describe lupus.
I think like the metaphor of saying like, oh, it's like a party in my body, and it's just
I really like that.
It's definitely good. And Chelsea, would you say like this is similar for you, or how does it affect sort of your daily life, or how would you maybe describe it?
It's quite similar, actually. I do really like the party metaphor. I usually also try and say that it's usually just my immune system being incredibly weak. I also have fatigue as well. That's probably one of the biggest things that I struggle with as well, and just tiredness and brain fog. I also have a lot of joint and muscle pain, so sometimes it doesn't help trying to get up as well. It's kind of like a mix of both, and I also have some sensitivity, so quite similar.
So the second question is sort of, how does it affect your family life, and what was it sort of like when you first got diagnosed?
So I was diagnosed at the age of 14, but I was quite lucky because my parents both work from home. So it meant that when I had to start going to appointments in the hospital more regularly, they could just take me there and back without having to figure out who's working, who's staying at home, who's taking me, who's not taking me. And at the very start, it was my parents that took me, like both of them would come with me to appointments, and so it meant that both of them kind of knew what was going on like firsthand. When I was first diagnosed, I was actually like taken straight to Glasgow. I'm in Aberdeen, so because they didn't really have a specialist up here, so we had to like go all the way there, and then that's when like everything kind of started with the medication and the juggling and all that kind of stuff, and just kind of explaining to us what lupus actually is and what that would mean for us as a family. But I'm quite lucky that my entire family have been quite supportive throughout the entire journey, and still am now. I go to appointments on my own now, and do my own thing with the kind of speaking to doctors and sorting out medication, all that stuff. But it does mean that it made it a lot easier at the start having them there at the beginning.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's also something that's really difficult, like when you grow up having your parents with you and you transition into adults and you suddenly have to sort of do all, like they expect you to do sort of all the care yourself, speak to all the doctors. It can be quite intimidating, but it's still good to have parent support sometimes. And Katrina, what was this like for you, and sort of how does it affect your family life, or sort of what was it like when you first got diagnosed and stuff?
For me, it was a bit different. I was 9 when I was diagnosed, so I was quite young. I think the big changes in my life, obviously, I was normal going to school every day, and it was a very short period of time when everything was different. I was spending months at a time in hospital. I was actually at Great Ormond Street, and it was quite difficult for people to visit me because it was quite far and quite difficult to get to. And yeah, I think my family struggled to deal with the big changes and the fact that even now I'm not like everybody else. I have to do things differently and I have a different life that I lead, and that's quite difficult for other people to understand. But I have good key people in my life that offer me support and understand me, and I always appreciate them. My mum especially. Even now at 23, my mum has to come with me to the doctors. I know I'm supposed to do by myself, but I refuse. No, my mum needs to be there.
And the third question is sort of how does your condition affect, or how did it affect, if you're sort of past that life experience, sort of like your school life and education, like potentially like work now? So I wasn't sure if Chelsea wanted to touch on that.
When I first got diagnosed, I found it incredibly difficult to, I mean, I still do actually, that's a lie, but it means that I really struggle to concentrate and I can't do things for long periods, or I need longer to do the same thing as most people would. So when I first went back to school after months of not being there, I found it really difficult to adjust how to work and kind of how to just do things like I normally would. So it meant that I wasn't achieving the same results as I used to, and that really hit hard. So it meant that I had to kind of adapt to a new lifestyle to figure out what was going to work for me now. And I had to carry on with that. And I got a lot of support from my school. So it meant that for exams and stuff, I had extra time, rest breaks, and I could type my exams rather than handwrite them, which was really good for me because my hands also got really tired after writing like half a page. So that was also really sad for me because I really like to write. So it means I just have to kind of take it like a bit, like bit by bit now. I did go to university. I graduated in July. I have a business management and psychology degree, and I got that at Aberdeen University. That was not easy though. I had like so many flare-ups during the entire time, and it was like quite an in and out type thing. There was quite a few times, especially at the beginning, where I thought this isn't going to be for me. I'm just going to have to leave this and like either come back another time or just not come back at all. But I managed to stick by it, and again I got the same kind of support that I got at school with the extra time and the got like having to type my exams rather than write them. I am really glad that I managed to do it, but like it was definitely incredibly difficult, and I don't know if it's something that I could probably do again. But yeah, that's how it affected my education.
And so what about like your work life now you've graduated?
So I actually work at Rare Youth Revolution. I have an internship as the youth coordinator. So I just kind of oversee the usual youth stuff. So normally I would have the same background as Katie, but today I'm going to just sit back and be the person to answer the questions. So I was quite lucky that I landed this internship. It's basically a mixture of everything that I like doing. So social media, admin, teamwork, events, and like it was kind of, and writing articles as well, and it was quite hard for me to find something that I actually wanted to delve into. So having something that kind of combined all these things that I like doing and have also done in the past with other work things and volunteering things was quite good for me. So I'm quite lucky that I found that.
Yeah, definitely. And everyone, I'm sure, Rare Revolution can say they love having you as the youth coordinator. So that's great. And Katrina, sort of with you, how has your lupus sort of impacted like your school life, education, and like work, if you're in that now, and things like that?
For me, because I was so young when I was diagnosed, it was a bit of an awkward time for education because it was moving from primary school to secondary school, and obviously hospital appointments, being admitted into hospital made it super, super difficult. And because also that time there was a lot of change, puberty, changing schools, different friends, different teachers. It was, yeah, very chaotic, and it didn't really go very well. I think after about 2 or 3 years of being in and out of secondary school, I was homeschooled up until my GCSEs, which was, oh, it was not a fun time. It was being sick, having to have tutors and finding the right tutors, not really being able to pick my GCSEs because it depended on what tutor I could find. And yeah, not fun. Would never do that again. Would not recommend. Just kidding. But yeah, I think trying to do education with a long-term illness is a difficult task. And I think trying to figure out ways for it to work is key, but also very difficult. And after my whole secondary school experience, I did attempt to go to college, but again, it was the same situation of hospitals and flares and having other people, teachers, students understand me and my illness was quite difficult. And I think after a while, I just decided that it was not worth it for me. And I decided to kind of focus on working from home, being self-employed. And now my working life is basically lupus related. I talk about lupus, write articles about lupus, get involved in different medical research projects. And I find that quite fun. I mean, one thing I enjoy about having lupus is being able to help spread awareness for other people so people don't have to go through the experience that I went through. I want to be able to help other young people, not even just with lupus, any young person with a long-term illness. I want to help them and provide them with the tools to be able to live as normal lives as they can.
Yeah, definitely. And I think obviously that's what we're doing now.
Yeah.
And I can definitely relate sort of being diagnosed at that age. I was sort of diagnosed at 11, literally sort of 2 months before I started secondary school. And obviously I just moved country as well. So it's very unfortunate. But sort of going straight in school and all of that going on at once is a nightmare. And then also Chelsea as well. I can imagine it's so difficult, almost like starting a new school and making those friends and things, and then becoming ill and everyone most probably being like, what's going on with Chelsea? I can like imagine that's so difficult too.
For me, it was just before my first set of exams. So I had like kind of prepped myself for doing these exams, but then, a new year started and suddenly I had absolutely no idea what was going on. Like I was so out of it. And because I was going through the same in terms of kind of like the puberty stage, when I first started having the rash, it was kind of just put off as acne. So it kind of I guess elongated when I was actually going to fully get diagnosed, because they just thought, oh, it's just part of growing up, that you were going through these things and, getting more tired, you're doing more, like in terms of, you have to study more or whatever. So it was quite a weird transition to suddenly being like all right to suddenly having all these things to deal with, especially at such a young age. So
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's something that happens way too much when you're diagnosed at that age. It's always doctors just saying, oh, it's puberty or it's hormones or, your body's just changing. It's not right. And very frustrating. So following on from that, how has your condition sort of impacted your social life and your friendships? I'm not sure, Katrina, if you want to touch a bit on that.
Yeah, for me, friendships were always quite difficult once I was diagnosed. I think during my primary school years, the latter end, it was very much about my friends being like, where's Katrina gone? Why is she not in school? And then for me, I was put on steroids, which made me gain a lot of weight. So I looked completely different. And it was kind of like, oh, you're gone and then you come back and you don't look the same. And it was a lot of questions. And moving over to secondary school, most of my friends didn't go to the same secondary school as me. So it was a lot of meeting new people and then having to explain why I've been gone without them knowing. And I think the process of trying to change and having other people react to you changing or your different way of living is quite difficult. And so for me now, I just try to keep around the people that I know understand. And I find it quite difficult to make new friends, especially new friends that don't have a long-term illness, because I feel like I don't want to go through the process of having to explain myself. So yeah, I kind of just try to keep around the people that I know understand and care. And I'm very selective about the friends that I have, because the whole explaining process is not for me.
Yeah, definitely. It could be something that's so difficult, just having to explain your experiences to someone and then, having them actually understand that rather than not understanding it, or, being like, oh, I'm so sorry, that's awful, like get well soon. And, they mean the right thing, but it's not necessarily the thing you want to hear. And Chelsea, how has lupus affected your social life and friendships?
So I would probably say the same with you, as in terms of I found it quite difficult with friends just kind of explaining the process to them, or just kind of what it is for me, what it is like for me to like live every single day. And so it means that sometimes people can ask questions that you're a bit like, how do I even answer that? At the end of my school year, I thought about going on a school trip with some of my friends, but I kind of thought, they want to go on a beach holiday, I'm sun sensitive, I'm not going to be able to do that. So I just told them straight out, oh, it's okay, don't worry about it, I'm going to skip this one. There's no point in me, ruining a trip for someone else. And I had questions like, oh, but how long can you stay in the sun for? And you just kind of think, well, I'm not something that you just put in an oven, I can't, there's a timer for that kind of thing. So it's questions like that. Or I would maybe skip out on PE sometimes because I'm feeling too tired for it, and people would just say that I'm lucky that I'm able to do that and can go home. And it's like, to be honest, I would rather just be like a normal kid and just be able to do all those things. So as I've grown up, I might have friends that are maybe like more of the acquaintance side, but I only have a few select people that I'd be willing to kind of go a bit deeper into that kind of stuff, kind of maybe show that side where I can be a bit more vulnerable and be like, look, I really can't do that. And it's kind of up to them whether or not they want to understand or not. Obviously, they won't be able to put themselves into my shoes, and I wouldn't want them to, but just kind of at least trying to empathize with what I'm going through, and that I'm not lucky to be able to do this or not be able to do that. It's something that I would actually rather be able to do. So I have always found the explaining process quite difficult, just like you said, Katrina. But I think, as I've grown up, I've started to realize that I need to really be careful about who I'm spending my time with, because I don't want to end up being in a situation that would make my health like really bad just because I decided to, give them the benefit of the doubt or something. So yeah, I think you just have to, I just have to be a bit more careful with who I choose to be friends with, and kind of who I want to actually explain that kind of stuff to, like who it's actually worth kind of going through that effort with.
Yeah, definitely. It's a really difficult process. And also, I was keen on asking this question because I feel like it's something that's sometimes quite nice to touch on, but sort of like through lupus and your condition and stuff, has that sort of like help you sort of make friends who like also have lupus or other rare diseases, whether that's sort of like online and in person? I don't know whether you guys wanted to touch on that at all.
I'll go first. I think having lupus has been, some of it's really bad, but some of it's good. I've had some great experiences with other young people, not just with lupus, because I think finding other young people with lupus is very difficult. I think Chelsea is maybe like the second or third person I've met, or young person I've met with lupus, so it's quite difficult to track them down. But young people with long-term illnesses, I've been able to meet quite a few through hospital and different activities, and I think it's nice meeting other people who just understand. And I think being able to have that bond over understanding how sometimes life is a bit unfair and things get a bit difficult, and I just really enjoy it. Now, how else would I be able to talk and have other people understand exactly how I feel? So yeah, I think having lupus has some of its benefits with making friends.
Yeah, definitely. I wasn't sure, Chelsea, if you had anything said about that either.
I would probably say the same thing. I don't know that many people living with lupus personally. I think you're maybe the second person that I know, and anyone else that I do know is mainly online. So I don't know anyone that's close physically to me that has it. So it is quite nice to just kind of talk about those things and kind of talk about what you go through, the similarities, and it is a bit more relatable. So, and also, back to the friend thing that we were speaking about before, a lot of my friends wouldn't understand what it's like to live with chronic illness. So it's quite nice to have that balance of people that do. So then, you can kind of jump back and forth and kind of say like, oh, today is really bad, but we can talk about that, and the symptoms are sometimes similar or maybe worse or better, but it's something that you can relate to, and I think sometimes that's quite nice to have. So I think it's quite nice to be able to make friends with people within the community, whether or not they have lupus or something else, like Katrina said. But I think it is quite nice to kind of be in that community with other people that you can kind of just feel safe and comfortable in.
Yeah, definitely. It obviously doesn't take away from any of our experience at all, but sometimes having those sort of few people who actually sort of understand when you're just like, I am having a bad day, and they just get it, can sort of be really nice, definitely. So has your condition sort of affected your hobbies, sort of like growing up and now? Sort of have you had to stop or like change sort of how you do like certain things you enjoy doing?
So when I was younger, I used to do a lot of different sports and play instruments and just anything that I was able to fit into the day. Since being diagnosed, I had to be a bit more selective with what I'm able to do. So it meant that instead of doing, a sport almost every day of the week, I chose one, which is table tennis, which I still do now. I've been playing since I was about 10, so I've been playing for over a decade, and I play in matches now as well, like weekly league matches. So I have that, which is quite nice, and it can let me, take my frustrations out a little bit with like a little bit of hard play and competitive play. I do also just love the people there. Like just at uni, I've met some wonderful people that I'm still friends with now. And so I think it's not just the sport, but also the people that you meet. Obviously they're all incredibly understanding about if I can only play for 10 minutes sometimes. Like if I'm going through one of those days that, I don't have a lot of energy, I can just sit out for a bit and just talk to people. I also quite like doing creative things. So I quite like making things. I crochet, and I've been crocheting for about a year and a bit now. And I have my own little Etsy business, which I really like, but it means that I can make things, but also, do something with it as well. Like instead of just, making like little things like this, I can also, give them to people as gifts or sell them. So I quite like doing that, and also writing. I've always liked writing. So it means that being part of Rare Youth gives me another place for me to write. So it just means I have to choose when I actually have the time and when I actually have the energy to do it. But apart from that, I think it's really important to have those hobbies, because it can distract you, it can make you feel more relaxed, but also just kind of give you another thing to like, just have fun with. So
Yeah, definitely. And Katrina, so what would you say sort of about your hobbies, sort of like both growing up and now? Have you had to sort of like change them or like adapt them in any way?
One of my favorite hobbies that I had to give up was playing the saxophone. I think I was about 10 or 11 when I played the saxophone, and it would just make my lips so swollen. Like it was ridiculous. Like I'd play for half an hour and my lips would be so swollen, and it's quite a heavy instrument. So I did have to give that up, which was quite sad. But I think the top of my list of hobbies and things I like to do is anything creative. So painting, drawing, writing, making things. I actually wanted to get into crochet, but I'm just a bit daunted by the idea of it. But yeah, I think anything creative I love doing, but I've always had to kind of either do it for a short period of time, or I have little grips for my pens and pencils. And painting is actually one of the things that have caused me the least amount of pain, which I do the most now. But yeah, it's just about adapting to make those things work for you. So short periods of times and adapted tools really help.
Yeah, definitely. I think sort of like crafts and arts and things can be something that people find so therapeutic. Like I'm really into that myself as well. But I think definitely, I think like it sort of shows how, you guys like even like the littlest things in your life you have to think about or like give up and things like that because of your condition. I think that just sort of really highlights how it just sort of affects almost just every single part, really. And following from that, so what would you guys say people could do to sort of help make your daily life easier? So I know Chelsea, if you sort of have anything that sort of people could do, like watching this, like take away to maybe like if they have a friend with a rare disease or anything like that.
So I did actually write an article about how to be supportive to people living with lupus. I think I wrote it last year for Lupus Awareness Month. But I think one of the biggest things for me is to just listen. I think one of the things that frustrate me the most is when people give me unsolicited advice. It really annoys me when I'm just trying to maybe rant about something or maybe tell them something that's going on, and they maybe try to come up with solutions. And normally if I'm getting to that point, it's because I've already tried everything, and it's quite difficult for me to hear the same thing that I've already tried. So I would just say to try and listen when I'm trying to say something. Don't necessarily think that I'm wanting like something to be resolved. It might just be that I want to rant about it. Maybe a doctor's being like not very understanding, or I've been given not like a lot of support maybe from my university or something, or a friend. So that would probably be my key takeaway. Obviously, it would be quite nice for people to just kind of look into it as well. But I think the best thing is to actually listen to the people that actually have it, rather than maybe a list of symptoms on a website or a textbook for, I guess, medics. So yeah, that's probably what I would say.
Yeah, definitely. I think listening is like important for anyone watching this, like friends, family, medical professionals, like literally anyone. Like sometimes it's just like, oh, please like just listen to us. And like Katrina, sort of what would you say, what could sort of people do to sort of help make your daily life easier?
I agree with Chelsea. I think people's advice when I talk to them is not very helpful. But one thing I also really dislike is when I'm like minding my own business, doing my own thing, and someone's obviously been observing me and they just make a comment, oh, well, maybe you should be doing something this way. Maybe, and it's just like, I didn't ask you. We're not having that conversation. Why do you think that you know my illness better than I do? So that really, really annoys me. But I think this is a bit maybe contradicts itself, but I think people asking questions, I don't want stupid questions, but I want someone to show they're actually care and interested in me and my illness. So like asking me also, I don't know, how was your hospital appointment? Or you said you don't like taking those pills. Why don't you like taking those pills? So just questions that show that you actually care and want to understand me better, I really appreciate.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good point, to be honest. And sorry, were you going to say something, Chelsea?
Sorry, I was just also going to say, I think the other thing that I really appreciate is when people go out their way to offer help, or, you know, kind of make it known that they've taken into account what you've said, maybe in a previous conversation or what you've just said, and try and make those accommodations, even if it's just walking a little bit slower. I think even just doing something as simple as that, or letting you take the lift instead of being like, no, you need to exercise more, or, you know, just offering to take your bag. I think just simple things like that is actually a really big thing to us. So I think even just, you know, offering a little bit of help, or just kind of remembering what you did say, like not just listening, but actually remembering, is a big thing as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also like going back to friends, just adding on to that as someone else with a rare disease. I feel like also like when friends sort of like, if you say like, oh, you know, for example, if you were like, oh, can we have a day out to the beach? And you said no, like I'm sun sensitive, it's, I think it's also like always really nice when someone turns and was like, oh, okay, like let's do something then that you can do. So I think as well, like touching on like asking help, I think things like that can be sort of really beneficial for people with chronic illness as well. And following on, so what future goals do you have, and what obstacles do you face with trying to meet these, or like with your conditions? Are there sort of extra things you have to think about when you like look towards these? So I don't know whether Chelsea wants to go first.
So I really want to do quite a lot of things. I have a really big list of things I want to do. And I think one of the reasons is because I know at some point, a bit earlier than most people, you know, my body is just not going to let me anymore. So I really want to own my own business. So I really want to do something crafty and like own my own like little craft business, and, you know, sell things that I make and all this kind of stuff. I do also want to write a book. But, you know, having all of these things I like doing can sometimes be a little bit overwhelming for me. So I think I just kind of need to figure out what my body is actually going to let me do now, and kind of prioritize what I want to do first, and not try and do all of it at once, which I'm really bad for doing. Katie, you'll know this. So I think I just need to kind of listen to my body and make sure that I know that I am capable, but I might just have to have a bit more restriction, or like I maybe need to be more cautious about certain things. I think I just have to think more about it than most people. But it doesn't mean that I can't do it. I think I just kind of have to remember that I still can.
Yeah, definitely. That's really good advice. Sort of remembering you can, but having to adapt in whatever way
Yeah.
possible. And Katrina, I wasn't sure if you had anything else to say about that. Do you sort of have any future goals, and sort of are there any obstacles that you sort of face with your condition when trying to meet these?
Yeah, I think most people with a long-term chronic or rare disease have big goals. I think we spend a lot of time in a negative place, that we constantly dream and think about things we would like to do. So I think it's quite common for us to have many, probably too many goals that we'd like to achieve. And not to be too dark, I think we all know our own mortality and how difficult life will get the older we get. So it's always about doing as much as we can now as well. And for me, I really want to be self-sufficient in my own business, company, charity, whatever it should be. I'd like to have that and own that, and use that to help other young people like me in similar situations. I really feel passionate about advocating and spreading awareness, and just making the world a bit more adapted to us, so it's easier for us to exist and live and achieve the same as everybody else. But I know for me especially, I have to slow down, think about it a bit more, plan it better, And just, yeah, I'm always a bit fearful that because of my weak immune system, the moment I start going out and interacting with other people more, it's just going to cause a flare and I'll go back into hospital. And it's just, yeah, we're having to think carefully about how we do things. Like Chelsea said, is always really important, and planning is key, but that shouldn't stop you from wanting to achieve your goals.
Yeah, definitely. All right, amazing. And lastly, we always try to end the Rare Talk series with a bit of advice. Just wondering if either you have any advice for someone watching who might have lupus or another rare disease. So, I know, Katrina, if you want to start with that, if you've got any advice that you want to give out?
For me, I think one thing that I wish I knew when I first got diagnosed was kind of the realness of what having a long-term illness is. I think, especially as a child, but even anyone being diagnosed, is very much, oh, it's going to be fine, you're going to be fine, everything's going to be okay, you take the medications, and then you'll feel a bit better. But I think sometimes you just need the truth of what's going to happen so you can be prepared. I think for me, it was very much like a train hitting me with all this information and change. And I feel like someone was there to say, hey, I know you have this illness and it's going to affect you in these exact ways, but here's how I've managed. So I feel like people sharing their experiences and looking at other people with your illness and hearing their stories is really helpful. So anyone who's been newly diagnosed or has a diagnosis, I think it's key to look into other people and see how they've managed and how they live.
Definitely, sort of that peer support and having someone older who's lived through it can give you sort of a bit of like lived advice rather than coming from like the doctors or nurses who sort of only know the medical facts and not necessarily how it affects like your whole life, I guess. And Chelsea, again, I wasn't sure if you had any advice for anyone watching who sort of might have lupus or another rare disease.
I think some of it we kind of really touched on, just kind of, you know, making sure that you're surrounded by people that are understanding about your condition. Also kind of trying to find maybe another outlet that can kind of be therapeutic to you or relaxing to you, like some sort of hobby or passion. But also just to kind of remember that you're the only one that knows your body. So, you know, whether or not you're speaking to a doctor that doesn't fully understand or a friend that doesn't, you know, understand what you're going through, you need to be able to kind of say it in a way that they can either understand, or you'll have to put it in, you might have to rephrase it a few times, or you just kind of have to learn to advocate for yourself, because not many people are going to do it for you. So you're just going to have to build up that confidence to be able to speak up for yourself in appointments or to your friends when, you know, your friend has been unsupportive or your doctor's gaslighting you or whatever. You need to kind of learn that you're the one that knows best about your body and your condition, and so you're the one that has to fight for it.
But thank you so much for everyone for watching today, and for Chelsea and Katrina for joining us. It's been sort of great talk, learning a bit more sort of about lupus and how it affects you in your daily life. We'll hopefully be having sort of more Rare Talk series out soon, and you can learn more information about Rare Youth Revolution and info on how to join our youth team on our website, which is going to be linked down below in the bio. My screen now because I'm not.
Can we have bloopers? Can this go in the bloopers?
Yeah, that would be actually quite fun having bloopers.
I think so. I think we can have a bloopers
That would
section.
be quite funny. See, Chelsea's gonna make me laugh. I've got to take you off my screen. One sec.
I'll try not to steal your line.
Oh no, it's okay. It's fine. We can share it.
Have you sort of gone into like a job? I know you have. I don't know why I said that. I was like, do you want to talk about that now? Because you work for Rare Youth, or but you can learn more information about Rare Youth. I will start again. Sorry, that was such a dramatic, like, frustration. Rare Youth Revolution. I'm gonna have to slow down when I say it.